Hey, Steve Mignani here doing the junkyard crawl at Bernardston Auto Wrecking in Bernardston, Massachusetts with a 1966 Dodge Coronet Deluxe station wagon. Remember station wagons? You know, after World War II, as the baby boomer families started having kids, they suddenly needed station wagons to move the kids, the groceries, the crib, all that kind of stuff. And between 1951 and 1965, station wagons grew from like 1% to about 17% of every car sold in this country. 1966 was a great year for Chrysler, and you got to keep in mind that Dodge made the Coronet in the Coronet, Coronet Deluxe, Coronet 440, Coronet 500, Coronet RT, and of course the vast majority of wagons were done as the Coronet and the Coronet Deluxe and the Coronet 440. You couldn't get a Coronet 500 wagon or a Coronet RT wagon. That would have been cool. But again, this one here is a great example of a Coronet Deluxe, one notch up from the bottom. And this one was crashed long ago and parked here at Bernardston Auto Wrecking. But something about 1966 is that this is known as Chrysler Corporation's B-body platform, the mid-sized car, the B-body. 66 was the second generation, a whole new car. And one of the big things is the firewall. It's more or less flat, except this one's been smashed up from some kind of damage. But again, this flange right here is seen on all 66 through 1970s. And basically, the deal with these is the 65 back to 62, the first generation B-body, has a very different shape here. And what happened with the second gen 66, Chrysler moved the engine back about an inch, which makes something, well, a difficulty. If you have a max wedge exhaust manifold from a 62, 3, or 4, and you try and use it on a 66 up B-body, ain't gonna work. The flanges hit the firewall because, again, for the second generation 66 back B-body platform, the engines move back an inch versus the first gen 65, 62. So if you try to put max wedge manifolds on one of these things, you have to beat the firewall to make it work. But this one here, again, being a 66, final year for the single pot master cylinder. We see it right there, 67. These things become a dual circuit, federally mandated. And the rust has broken this one in two pieces. Again, rust wins in the end. Unbelievable. But again, this one here was once a Coronet Deluxe wagon, you know, white car. It is 6 passengers, I believe, and the VIN, let's have a peek at that to learn more. We'll open the door, and here's the VIN. We can see that it begins with WL, that means Coronet Deluxe, 45, 6-passenger wagon. F is the 318 Poly, 6 is 1966. And we can see the floors have been Fred Flintstoned on this thing, but this has the original material on the seats. Look at that, very austere stuff. But again, the Coronet Deluxe was one step above the Coronet. Look at the rubber floor mat material, that green junk down there, and that is where the carpeting would have been on, say, a Coronet 440 type vehicle. But again, the station wagons were generally pretty austere, meant for hauling the family around. You could doll these up if you wanted with a 383, 4-barrel, air conditioning, cruise control, all that kind of stuff. But this one, again, is a 318 Poly. Now, what does that mean? Well, the front half of this thing is located over here. Let me grab that real quick. So it's, yeah, right over here. Okay, this is the front, and we can see here that rust literally made this car so weak that it broke into two pieces when it was moved. But getting back to that engine, right here, let's lift this up. Okay, that's the 318 Poly right there, 2-barrel carburetor. And the Poly means that it has polyspherical valve orientation. Now here's the deal, this engine right here was only $30 more than the base 273, but it gave you 50 horsepower more. So you got 50 for 30, not a bad deal. And again, the base V8 would have been a 273, and we can close that up. But here's the front clip of this thing, 10-inch drum brakes. 11 inches were possible on the heavy duty or the towing package, but these are the standard 10-inch drums. No sway bar on this one. This is the radius rod, that's normal. But the front sway bars on these, that's cool because the lower control arm has a tab that can be used on a Roadrunner restoration. Again, front sway bars, the lower control arm is specific on a heavy duty suspension B-body. But here's Consumer Reports from June of 1966. I was literally almost 2 years old when this thing came out. And this is a nice rundown on all the station wagons. There they are on the right. Volkswagen 1600, Mercury Comet, Belvedere 2, and Buick Special. Now the Belvedere and the Coronet were very, very similar, and it's kind of cool what Consumer Reports has to say. And there it is right there. They say here, Consumer Union's Belvedere wagon carried the 318 cubic inch 230 horsepower optional engine most dealers order for their stock. For an extra $30, it provides a more usable power level for a wagon and, in Consumer Union's opinion, should do so with virtually no penalty in fuel economy. And here on the right we see they have these ratings here: acceptable, not acceptable, fair, poor. And the Belvedere and Coronet cousin did pretty good. They had very good ratings here, there. And meanwhile, Comet got poor for safety of the inside door handles. And of course, this is the ratings. Now on the next page, the all-important, did it pass or not? Consumer Reports was kind of a, a consumer watchdog, as they are now. In fact, these magazines don't have any advertising. They wouldn't take it. But here it is right here. Here are the ratings. And on the left it says here that the Coronet is acceptable, which is pretty cool. And you can see the things that they liked about it was smooth and fairly quiet. Power was high. And so the station wagons, but again, station wagons were the SUVs of the 1950s and 60s. Baby boomer families, which were, growing, and the adults of today are the baby boomers of yesterday, and the grandparents really today of the baby boomers of yesterday. But they were buying station wagons to keep the kids in the back and go on vacations. Now here, there were a total of, we have 27,700 Coronet Deluxe wagons. Of them, about 90% were V8 powered. In other words, only about 3,100 of these things had a slant six. Yes, you could get a slant six in a Coronet station wagon. The only unfortunate thing, again, is that there was no such thing as a Coronet RT station wagon, or of course the Coronet Super B of 1968. There was no such thing as a Coronet Super B wagon. That would have been so cool. Muscle wagons. In fact, the Plymouth Roadrunner was never offered as a station wagon. You can bolt one together, but again, these things, as hot as it got, would have been a 383 4-barrel with 330 horsepower and a 4-speed. You could get a factory 4-speed on the floor in a wagon if you really wanted it. I would say maybe 100 or 200 people got one. I've seen a few along the way, but they're pretty rare things. Most of them were torque flight automatics like this one, or 3 on the column, which is also a very typical thing in a low-line wagon like